In this video, I'm going to show how to fire a webhook for a Notion event. The secret lies in using Slack as an intermediary. In simple terms, we add a native automation for a Notion event. Notion can send native notifications to Slack, and then Slack fires the webhook. So why do we care about webhooks? A webhook is like opening a browser with the destination of our choosing, but there's an automated listener on the other end. Recently, Notion gave us buttons and then automations at the row and property level of databases, but neither one could fire a webhook. That meant that the only things we could automate were limited to the options that Notion made available. Platforms like Make.com, Zapier, and Pipedrive give us much greater automation control, but they all run on polling timers that are disconnected from the Notion event. If you poll too infrequently, responses are slow and it's a bad experience in Notion. If you poll too often, then you burn through credits or need more expensive paid tiers on your automation platform. Webhooks would let us fire automation only when we need it, but they're not yet available natively in Notion. So let's dive into how to configure a webhook from Notion. I'm going to focus on Make.com, but the same principles apply to the other automation platforms too. The first thing you need to do is create your own Slack account. The free tier is just fine, so long as you can create your own channels. With your Slack account, create a channel for the sole purpose of listening to notifications from Notion. Start with just one channel and name it similar to the event that will be sending messages to the channel. For example, New Project Row or Project Note Changed. I'm going to work with the table to measure ingredients for recipes, so I'll name my channel New Measured Ingredient. Now, let's add native automation in Notion to notify the Slack channel on a new row creation. To get started, add the native automation to a new row so the trigger is a new page and the action is notifying Slack. Select the name channel that you created above. Unfortunately, there's still a delay anywhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes before the event and when it shows up in Slack. Your test is to add a new row in Notion and then wait for the message to show up in Slack confirming that the automation works. Next, we need to create a scenario in our automation platform that listens to the webhook. This will get you a URL endpoint that you'll use later. So in Make, we're going to create a new scenario. We're going to start by naming the scenario and then adding a webhook. We want a custom webhook. We'll add a new one. Go ahead and name it and save. Now we're going to add the Notion module to look at the table that we just modified. So we're going to do search objects. Let's search for the table that we want to work with. In this case, measured ingredients. And we want to filter to only show us the rows where the formula for the checkbox adjust title is equal to true, using the checkbox formula for equals true. And save. We'll go ahead and rename it to make it easier to keep track of which objects we're working with. If we want, we can go ahead and run this module to give us information for later. But for now, we'll go ahead and add the next object, which is updating a database item. We're going to be updating the same table that we just did a search on. Now, the particular item ID is the page that we just found in our previous search. And ingredients quantity is the title field here, and we are going to set that to the value of our calculated field for the calculated title. We want to put a filter condition, so we're only going to do the second Notion operation in the event that we had records returned from the first one. So we'll do a check on the number of bundles. And we can go ahead and rename this one too. Now we'll go ahead and test it, get that web address, and we'll call it directly while we run the scenario in debug mode. And we see that it executed and it also updated all of our ingredient quantities that didn't meet our formula. Now we need to add an outbound webhook from Slack in response to messages on our channel. So we're going to go to Add Apps. We're going to search for webhooks and add outgoing webhooks. Add to Slack. Add the outgoing integrations. And we'll go down here to the configurations. We're telling it what channel we want to listen on. So we'll select our channel. We're not going to filter by trigger words because the content of the messages will be the title of the new row in our table, and that can vary. We're going to give a descriptive label to this outbound webhook. But going back up, we need to put in the URL of the webhook from Make. So we can get that here. We'll copy the web address and paste it. We also need to make sure that our Make automation is actually enabled so that it will continue listening in the background. So now I can add a new ingredient. And the title, ingredient quantity measure, this will automatically be updated for me in about 2 minutes as soon as the automation fires. Now, technically, I don't have to wait for it. I could go ahead and say what I want in here. But what will happen is when the automation kicks in, it will ensure that even if I put something in here, that the title will match the format that I've already specified. And there we see the update has already taken place.